For 90 days, my husband never touched me. Not my hand, not my waist, not even my eyes. Every night he closed a door between us like I didn't exist. I wore silk. I wore smiles. I wore patience. He gave me silence. Then one night, another man held my hand in public. And my husband finally looked at me like he was afraid to lose me. His voice changed. His eyes darkened. The man who treated me like air suddenly wanted to know where I'd been, who I was with, why I was smiling. But here's the thing. When a man wakes up only because someone else sees your worth, is that love or just fear? The restaurant hostess smiled as she led me through the dimly lit space, and I smoothed down my yellow dress for the third time. My phone buzzed with another text from my mother back in Ghana. Be yourself, Sarah. Remember, this is just a meeting. Just a meeting where I'd sit across from a complete stranger who might become my husband because our parents owned companies that wanted to merge. Modern arranged marriages, they called it. Business with a wedding cake. He was already there, sitting perfectly straight in his black suit, staring at his water glass like it held secrets to the universe. Park Dae-sung looked exactly like his photo. Sharp jawline, dark hair styled neatly, and an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. When I reached the table, he stood up mechanically and extended his hand. His palm was warm, but the handshake lasted exactly 2 seconds before he pulled away. "Miss Mensah," he said in a smooth voice that had no emotion attached to it. "Please, call me Sarah." I gave him my brightest smile, the one that usually made people smile back. His lips barely moved upward before returning to their straight line. We sat down, and silence stretched between us like an invisible wall. I tried again. "So, your mother mentioned you work in investment banking?" "Yes." One word, nothing else. "That must be interesting. Do you enjoy it?" "It's suitable." He picked up the menu, studying it with intense focus that seemed excessive for choosing dinner. I felt my cheerfulness deflating like a balloon losing air. This was going to be a long evening. Throughout dinner, I asked questions and received answers that were shorter than my grocery lists. He didn't ask me a single thing about my life, my job as a marketing manager, or even basic things like my favorite color. When dessert came, I'd pretty much given up on conversation and just focused on my chocolate cake, which was better company than my future husband anyway. 2 months later, we stood at the altar. My dress was beautiful. The flowers were perfect, and my family had flown in from Accra looking proud and excited. Dae-sung repeated his vows in that same flat tone he used to order coffee, and when the officiant said he could kiss the bride, he gave me the quickest peck possible before turning to face our guests. My cousin Abena whispered that he was probably just nervous. I wanted to believe her. The wedding reception was a blur of congratulations and photos where I smiled genuinely, while Dae-sung's expression remained frozen. When we finally arrived at our new apartment in Manhattan, a spacious place his parents had bought as a wedding gift, I felt my heart racing with nervousness and maybe a tiny bit of hope. This was our beginning. Maybe alone together, he would finally relax and show me who he really was beneath that cold exterior. I changed into a soft nightgown I'd bought specially for tonight, my hands shaking slightly as I brushed my hair. When I stepped out of the bathroom, Dae-sung was standing near the hallway with a pillow under his arm. He glanced at me for half a second, then looked away. "Good night," he said simply, walking toward the guest bedroom. "Wait." My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Where are you going?" "To sleep. You should rest too. It's been a long day." He disappeared into the guest room and closed the door with a soft click that sounded incredibly loud in the quiet apartment. I stood there, in my pretty nightgown, feeling like someone had dumped ice water over my head. This was my wedding night, the beginning of my marriage, and my husband just walked away like I was a roommate he barely tolerated. The next morning, I woke to an empty apartment. A note on the kitchen counter read, "Gone to work. Help yourself to anything." It wasn't even signed. This became our pattern. Dae-sung left before sunrise and returned after dark. We ate dinner in silence when we ate together at all, which wasn't often. He spent most evenings in his home office, door closed, completely unreachable. I tried everything I could think of. I cooked Korean dishes, watching YouTube videos to learn how to make kimchi jjigae and bulgogi. He ate without comment, thanked me politely, then retreated to his office. I dressed beautifully, hoping he'd notice. He didn't. I asked about his day, his childhood, his interests. I got one-word answers and excuses about being tired. 3 months passed like this. 3 months of living with someone who treated me like furniture. We had separate bedrooms, separate lives, separate everything except a last name and an address. My friends back home asked how married life was treating me, and I lied through my teeth, saying everything was wonderful. How could I explain that my husband had never touched me beyond that awkward wedding kiss, that he looked through me instead of at me? One evening, his company held a dinner party at a fancy hotel. Dae-sung told me about it only 2 days before, adding that my attendance was expected. I wore a deep red dress that hugged my curves, hoping for any reaction. He simply nodded when he saw me and said I looked appropriate. Appropriate? Like I was a business report he was approving. At the party, I smiled and made small talk with his colleagues, while Dae-sung stood stiffly beside me, contributing nothing to conversations unless directly asked. I felt like an accessory he'd brought along because the invitation said, +1. When he moved away to talk business with some executives, I wandered toward the dessert table, needing sugar and space to breathe. That's when I heard her voice. A woman with perfectly styled hair was talking to another lady near the chocolate fountain. "Poor thing doesn't even know," she said, in a voice meant to be quiet but wasn't quiet enough. Dae-sung was completely in love with someone before this arrangement. His parents forced him to break it off. Apparently, she was after his money, but he couldn't see it. He only agreed to this marriage because they threatened to disown him. My hand froze halfway to a macaron. The woman continued, not noticing me standing 3 feet away. "I'm his assistant, so I see everything. He's miserable. Keeps a photo of the ex-girlfriend in his desk drawer. I feel bad for the new wife. She didn't stand a chance against a ghost." I put the macaron back untouched and walked toward the bathroom, my heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. Inside a stall, I sat down fully clothed and let the truth wash over me. He wasn't cold because of personality or shyness. He was cold because he was punishing me for existing, for being the replacement of someone he actually wanted. I was paying for a situation neither of us had chosen, but unlike him, I'd actually tried to make it work. When I came out, I fixed my makeup and returned to the party with my chin up. Dae-sung was exactly where I'd left him, discussing quarterly reports like feelings didn't exist. I stood beside him, playing the role of the perfect wife, while inside I felt something shift. I was done trying to melt an iceberg that didn't want to thaw. That night at home, I didn't cook dinner. I didn't ask about his day. I went straight to our bedroom, changed into regular pajamas instead of anything nice, and got into bed with a book. When Dae-sung came home an hour later, he knocked softly on my door. "Did you eat?" he asked through the wood. "Yes," I lied. "All right. Good night then." I listened to his footsteps fade toward the guest room and felt absolutely nothing. 3 months of rejection had finally done their job. My heart was building its own walls now, and I was going to let them stand tall. Monday morning, I walked into my office building with a new decision firmly in place. If Dae-sung wanted a marriage that existed only on paper, fine. But I wasn't going to spend my actual life being miserable. I had a career I loved, friends I enjoyed, and a whole city to explore. I would be the best marketing manager this company had ever seen, and I'd find happiness outside the prison of my apartment. "Morning, Sarah." Derek Williams appeared beside my desk with 2 coffee cups, his easy smile already making the day feel brighter. "Thought you might need this. I grabbed your usual from that place on 5th Avenue. Derek was the art director, responsible for all the visual campaigns our team created. He had warm brown eyes, dimples when he smiled, and the kind of personality that made everyone around him feel comfortable. We'd worked together for 8 months, but lately he'd been extra friendly, always finding reasons to stop by my desk. "You're a lifesaver." I accepted the coffee gratefully, noticing how he'd remembered I liked it with oat milk and cinnamon. Dae-sung didn't even know I drank coffee, much less how I took it. "How was your weekend?" "Went to this amazing street fair in Brooklyn. There was a vendor selling Ghanaian food, actually. Made me think of you." He settled into the chair beside my desk like he had all the time in the world. "Have you been to any of the African markets here? I bet you miss home cooking." Something warm bloomed in my chest. Someone was actually interested in my background, my culture, my life. "I haven't explored much lately. Been busy with the wedding and everything." "Right, you got married recently." Derek's smile dimmed slightly. "How's that going? Your husband treating you like the queen you are?" I laughed, but it came out hollow. "It's an adjustment." Derek studied my face for a moment, and I had the uncomfortable feeling he could see more than I wanted to show. But he didn't push, just changed the subject to our upcoming campaign for a new client. We talked strategies and ideas until other coworkers arrived, and by the time he left my desk, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. This became our new routine. Derek brought coffee most mornings, and we'd chat about everything from work projects to movies to childhood memories. He told me about growing up in California with 4 siblings, about his college years studying design, about his dream of opening his own creative agency someday. He asked about Ghana, about my family, about my journey to America for graduate school and then staying for work. He actually listened to my answers, asked follow-up questions, and remembered details I mentioned in passing. 2 weeks after the company party, Derek invited me to lunch at a Thai restaurant near our office. "My treat," he insisted. "Consider it a welcome to the married club gift, even though I'm extremely late with it." Over pad thai and spring rolls, we talked about everything except my marriage, which I appreciated more than he knew. Derek had a way of making ordinary things seem interesting. He told stories that made me laugh so hard I nearly choked on my food, and he listened to my stories with genuine interest, leaning forward and maintaining eye contact like nothing else in the restaurant mattered. "You know what I love about working with you?" Derek said suddenly, setting down his fork. "You bring real passion to everything you do. Like that campaign last month for the skincare brand? You could have just done the standard approach, but you pushed for that angle celebrating different skin tones and cultural beauty standards. That was brilliant." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I just thought it would resonate better with actual consumers. It did more than resonate. It went viral. You made something meaningful, not just another ad. He smiled, and those dimples appeared again. "You're special, Sarah. I hope you know that." I looked down at my plate, not knowing what to say. When was the last time someone had complimented me like that, seen me as more than just appropriate or suitable? Back at the office, as we rode the elevator up together, I caught myself smiling for no reason. Derek noticed. "There it is," he said softly. "You should smile like that more often. It lights up your whole face." The elevator doors opened and we stepped out, but his words stayed with me for the rest of the day. That evening, I came home to find Dae-sung already there for once, sitting in the living room with his laptop. He glanced up briefly when I entered. "You're home late," he commented, eyes already back on his screen. "Had lunch with a coworker." I didn't know why I mentioned it. Maybe I wanted some reaction, any reaction. Okay. That was it. One word, and total disinterest. I went to the bedroom and changed, feeling the contrast between my afternoon with Derek and my evening with Dae-sung like a physical weight. One man made me feel seen and valued, the other made me feel invisible. It wasn't fair to compare them, I knew that, but I couldn't help it. As weeks passed, Derek and I grew closer. We started having lunch together 3 times a week, then 4. We took coffee breaks together, discussing everything from politics to poetry. He introduced me to his favorite bookstore, a tiny place in Greenwich Village where we browsed for hours. He showed me hidden gems around the city, places tourists never found, treating each outing like an adventure. One Saturday, Derek texted asking if I wanted to join him at an art gallery opening in Chelsea. His friend was exhibiting photography from various African countries, and he thought I might enjoy it. I hesitated, thumb hovering over my phone. Dae-sung was home, working in his office like always. I could ask if he wanted to come with me, but I already knew what he'd say. He'd claim he was busy, barely looking up from his computer. I texted Derek back, "I'd love to come." The gallery was beautiful, filled with stunning photographs of landscapes, people, and daily life across the continent. Derek walked beside me, reading the descriptions and asking thoughtful questions. When we reached a series of photos from Ghana, I felt tears prick my eyes. Images of children playing in the streets of Accra, women carrying goods to market, the vibrant colors of kente cloth and sunset over the coast. "That's home," I whispered. Derek moved closer, and I felt his presence like warmth on a cold day. "You must miss it terribly." "Every single day." I wiped my eyes quickly. "Sorry, I don't usually get emotional about photos." "Don't apologize. It's beautiful to love where you come from that much." He paused, then added, quietly, "Someone should love you the way you love your home. Fiercely, completely, without reservation." I turned to look at him, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. We stood there for a moment that stretched too long, something unspoken hanging in the air between us. Then someone bumped into me from behind, breaking the spell, and we continued through the gallery with careful space between us. After the gallery, Derek suggested getting dinner. We found a cozy Ethiopian restaurant and sat at a low table, sharing dishes and talking until the staff started cleaning up around us. He walked me to the subway station, and at the entrance, he took my hand. "Thank you for coming today," he said, his thumb brushing across my knuckles. "I always have more fun when you're around." I should have pulled my hand away immediately, but I didn't. For just a few seconds, I let myself enjoy the feeling of someone holding my hand with affection, of being touched by another person like I mattered. Then reality crashed back, and I gently extracted my fingers. I should get home. It's late. Of course. If Derek was disappointed, he hid it well. "Get home safe. Text me when you arrive." I nodded and descended into the subway, my hand still tingling where he'd held it. On the train ride home, guilt and confusion warred inside me. I wasn't doing anything technically wrong. Derek was my friend. We'd had dinner and visited a gallery, innocent activities that coworkers did all the time. But the way he looked at me, the way I felt around him, the fact that I'd rather spend time with him than go home to my own husband, none of that felt innocent. When I got home past 10, the apartment was dark except for a light under Dae-sung's office door. I went straight to bed without announcing my arrival. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Hope you got home okay. Sweet dreams." I smiled despite myself, typing back a quick response before plugging in my phone and turning off the lamp. In the darkness, I lay awake thinking about how badly I wanted someone to care where I was, to worry about me getting home safely, to wish me sweet dreams, and how sad it was that the person doing those things wasn't the man I'd married. Dae-sung stared at his phone screen, his entire body frozen. The photo his sister Hee-jin had sent showed his wife smiling up at some man, their hands clasped together, looking at each other like they shared secrets. The background showed a rooftop party with string lights and Manhattan's skyline. The man was handsome, relaxed, everything Dae-sung wasn't. And Sarah looked happy. Actually, genuinely happy in a way he'd never seen her look at home. His chest felt strange, like someone had reached inside and squeezed his heart with a fist. He'd spent 3 months carefully maintaining distance, protecting himself from caring too much about an arranged marriage that he hadn't wanted. He'd been so focused on nursing his wounded pride over losing his ex-girlfriend, on resenting his parents' control over his life, that he'd convinced himself not to let Sarah matter. Except she did matter. Somewhere between her attempts to cook his favorite foods and her patient questions about his day, between her bright dresses and the way she hummed softly while reading, she had crawled under his defenses without him noticing. And now someone else was holding her hand, making her smile, giving her the attention Dae-sung had been too stubborn and stupid to give. He looked at the clock. 11:30. She still wasn't home. His sister's text had come an hour ago, which meant Sarah had been with this man for who knew how long. Dae-sung paced his office, an unfamiliar burning sensation growing stronger with each passing minute. Was this jealousy? He'd never really felt it before, not even with his ex. But this feeling was consuming him, making his hands shake and his thoughts spiral. What if she kissed him? What if she was falling in love with him? What if Dae-sung had pushed her away so effectively that she'd found someone else? The thought made him want to put his fist through the wall. At 10 past midnight, he heard the apartment door open. Dae-sung walked out of his office and positioned himself in the living room, still wearing his work clothes from that morning. Sarah came around the corner, stopping short when she saw him standing there. "You're still awake," she said, surprise clear in her voice. "Where were you?" The words came out harder than he intended. Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Out with friends from work. Why?" "Which friends?" His jaw clenched involuntarily. She set her purse down slowly, studying him with an expression he couldn't read. "Does it matter? You've never asked before." "It matters now." He took a step closer, and he saw her eyes widen slightly. "You're my wife." "In name only." Her words hit him like a slap, but she wasn't done. "You've treated me like a stranger for 3 months, Dae-sung. You sleep in a different room. You barely speak to me. You act like I'm an inconvenience you have to tolerate. So forgive me if I don't understand why you suddenly care who I spend time with." Every word was true, and that made it worse. Dae-sung had done exactly what she described, systematically freezing her out because he'd been too hurt and angry about his own situation to see that she was hurting too. She'd tried so hard to reach him, and he'd rejected every attempt. "You're right," he said, his voice coming out rough. "I've been a terrible husband, but that changes now." "Why?" Sarah's eyes flashed with something between anger and pain. "Because your sister sent you a photo of me with Derek. Because you're suddenly jealous? That's not good enough." She knew about the photo. She was smarter than he'd given her credit for, reading the situation instantly. Dae-sung closed the distance between them until he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, until he could smell her perfume, something sweet and warm that he'd never let himself notice before. "You're right about that, too," he whispered. "I am jealous. Seeing you with him made me realize what an absolute fool I've been. I pushed you away because I was angry at my parents, at my situation, at losing control of my life. But you didn't deserve that. You've been nothing but kind and patient, and I repaid you with coldness." Sarah's breath hitched, but she didn't move away. They stood so close now that Dae-sung could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. His eyes dropped to her lips, full and soft, lips he'd barely touched since their wedding day. Before he could think better of it, before he could talk himself out of it, he cupped her face gently with both hands and kissed her. It wasn't like their wedding kiss, quick and obligatory. This kiss was real, deep, filled with 3 months of suppressed wanting and newfound realization. Sarah made a small sound of surprise but didn't pull away, and for a moment Dae-sung felt her respond, her lips moving against his, soft and warm and perfect. Then she placed both hands on his chest and pushed him back firmly. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, and her chest rose and fell rapidly. "No," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to ignore me for months, make me feel worthless and unwanted, then kiss me because another man paid attention to me. I'm not a toy you suddenly want because someone else picked it up. I'm a person, Dae-sung, a person with feelings that you've been stomping on since our wedding day." Before he could respond, she walked past him toward their bedroom. He heard the lock click into place, a sound that felt symbolic. She'd locked him out, and he deserved it completely. Dae-sung stood in the living room for a long time after, touching his lips where hers had been, his heart pounding like he'd run a marathon. He'd kissed his wife for the first time in their marriage, really kissed her, and it had awakened something in him that refused to go back to sleep. He wanted more. He wanted everything. He wanted her to look at him the way she'd looked at that other man in the photo, but wanting wasn't enough. He'd hurt her deeply, and words alone wouldn't fix it. He needed to show her through actions, through consistency, through becoming the husband she deserved instead of the cold stranger he'd been. Dae-sung went to the guest room, but instead of sleeping, he sat at the small desk and opened his laptop. He researched Ghana, reading about the culture, the food, the traditions. He looked up Ghanaian restaurants in New York City. He made notes about things Sarah had mentioned in passing during those first few weeks when she'd still been trying, details he'd ignored then but remembered now. As the sun rose, painting the sky pink and orange outside his window, Dae-sung made a decision. He would fight for his marriage. He would fight for Sarah. And he would prove that he could be the man she needed, even if it took everything he had. Sarah woke to find a note slipped under her bedroom door. Dae-sung's handwriting, usually so rigid and controlled, looked almost messy across the paper. "I'm sorry. Those words aren't enough, but they're where I start. I will prove to you every day that I can be better. I will earn your trust back. Please give me the chance." She crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash, then immediately retrieved it and smoothed it out on her nightstand. Her lips still tingled from last night's kiss, and that made her angry. How dare her body respond to him after months of rejection? How dare he suddenly decide to care? When she came home from work that evening, the guest bedroom door stood open, empty. Dae-sung's clothes were gone from the closet inside. Confused, Sarah walked to their shared bedroom and stopped in the doorway. All his things had been moved in. His suits hung beside her dresses, his shoes lined up next to hers, his books on the nightstand on what was clearly now his side of the bed. "What are you doing?" she asked from the doorway. Dae-sung looked up from where he was folding shirts into a drawer. "Moving into our bedroom, where I should have been from the beginning. You can't just decide that without asking me." "You're right. May I sleep in our bedroom, in our bed, like your actual husband?" His eyes met hers directly, and she saw determination there. "The bed, yes, but that doesn't mean anything else changes." Sarah heard how cold her voice sounded and was glad. Let him feel some of what she'd felt. "I understand." He went back to organizing his things, and Sarah retreated to the living room, her heart beating too fast. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee. Real, actual coffee brewed just the way she liked it. A plate of toast with jam sat on the counter, and another note. "Had an early meeting. There's a Korean bakery on Madison that apparently makes decent croissants. Left some for you. Have a good day." Sarah ate the croissants, which were delicious, and told herself this meant nothing. One breakfast didn't erase 3 months of neglect, but Dae-sung didn't stop at one breakfast. The next day, her car was warm when she went to leave for work, already running with the heat on high even though it was freezing outside. The day after that, she found her favorite Ghanaian snack, Azonto crackers, in the pantry. They were sold at exactly one specialty store in Queens, which meant he'd gone significantly out of his way to find them. 2 weeks into his campaign, Dae-sung started coming home early. He'd arrive at 6 instead of 9, loosening his tie as he walked through the door and actually asking about her day. Not the polite, disinterested questions from before, but real questions where he listened to her answers and asked follow-ups. "How did the presentation go?" he asked one evening, sitting at the kitchen counter while she cooked. "Fine. The client loved our campaign concept." She focused on chopping, vegetables, hyper-aware of him watching her. "The one about sustainable fashion." When she glanced over in surprise, he continued, "You mentioned you were working on it last week. Said you were nervous about whether they'd go for the educational angle versus straight advertising." He'd been listening, actually listening and remembering. Sarah didn't know what to do with that information. Dae-sung kept trying. He bought her flowers every Friday, different kinds each week, like he was learning her preferences. He asked about her family in Ghana and remembered their names when she mentioned them again later. He learned to cook one dish, Korean egg rolls, and made them for her even though they came out slightly burned. "These are terrible," he admitted, looking at the blackened edges. Sarah took a bite and couldn't help smiling. "They're not that bad. The inside is actually good." His whole face transformed when she smiled, like he'd won something precious. That look made Sarah's defenses crack just slightly, and she wasn't sure how she felt about it, but she also wasn't ready to forgive him. Every thoughtful gesture reminded her of the months when he'd given her nothing. Every time he reached for her hand or stood close, she remembered how he'd flinched away from any contact before. The hurt was still too fresh, the wound still too raw. Plus, there was Derek. Sweet, attentive Derek, who'd never needed jealousy to make him kind. They still had lunch together regularly, and Sarah found herself talking about the strange situation at home. "So your husband is suddenly acting like an actual husband?" Derek asked over sushi one afternoon. Suddenly being the key word. It feels manipulative, like he only cares because he saw me with you. Sarah poked at her California roll without eating it. Derek was quiet for a moment. "Can I be honest with you?" "Always." "I have feelings for you, Sarah. Have had them for a while now." He set down his chopsticks and looked directly at her. "I know your marriage is complicated, and I'm not trying to make it more complicated. But you should know that someone sees you, values you, and wants you to be happy. Someone who wanted those things before any jealousy entered the picture." Sarah's heart stuttered. She'd suspected Derek felt something more than friendship, but hearing him say it out loud made it real and terrifying. "Derek?" "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that you have options, that you don't have to stay in a marriage that makes you miserable just because your family's arranged it." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Life's too short to be with someone who doesn't cherish you every single day." His hand was warm, his eyes sincere. Part of Sarah wanted to hold on, to lean into this uncomplicated affection from someone who'd never hurt her. But another part, a growing part, thought about Dae-sung's burned egg rolls and the way he now listened when she talked. She gently pulled her hand back. "I need time to figure things out," she said softly. "My marriage is a mess, but it's my mess. I need to deal with it before I can think about anything or anyone else." Derek nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. "Fair enough. Just know I'm here if you need me." That evening, Sarah came home to find candles lit in the living room, and Dae-sung setting the small dining table they never used. He'd put on a dark blue shirt that made his eyes look even darker, and he looked nervous in a way she'd never seen him before. "What's all this?" she asked. "Dinner. A real dinner, together, like we should have been doing all along." He pulled out her chair. "I'm not a good cook, so I ordered from that Ghanaian restaurant in the Bronx. I hope I got things you actually like." He'd ordered fufu with light soup, jollof rice, fried plantains, and kilawele, all her favorites. Sarah sat down slowly, not sure what to make of this. They ate mostly in silence at first, but it wasn't the cold, uncomfortable silence from before. This felt different, charged with possibility. "I need to tell you something," Dae-sung said suddenly, setting down his fork, "about why I was so cold to you at the beginning." Sarah's chest tightened. "I already know. You were in love with someone before our arrangement. Your parents made you end it." His eyes widened. "How did you—" "I overheard your assistant at the company party." She pushed food around her plate. "She said you kept the ex-girlfriend's photo in your desk drawer." "I did." Dae-sung's voice was rough. Past tense. "I threw it away 4 weeks ago, right after I kissed you." "Want to know why?" Sarah looked up, and the intensity in his gaze pinned her in place. "Because that relationship was a fantasy I was clinging to. She loved my money, not me, but I couldn't see it until my parents pointed it out. Even then, I was so angry about losing my choice in the matter that I held on to the idea of her." He paused. "But you, Sarah, you're real. You tried so hard to build something with me, even when I gave you nothing back. You're kind and funny and so beautiful it hurts to look at you sometimes. You make our apartment feel like a home just by being in it, and I was too stupid and proud to see it." Sarah felt tears threatening. "Pretty words, Dae-sung, but words are easy. You've shown me through your actions who you really are. Then let me show you something different now. Let me prove through new actions that I can be the husband you deserve." He stood and held out his hand. "Dance with me?" "There's no music." He pulled out his phone and soft jazz started playing. "Now there is." Against her better judgment, Sarah took his hand and let him pull her close. They swayed in the candlelight, and this time, when his arms went around her, she let herself lean into his warmth. His chin rested on top of her head, and she felt his heartbeat against her cheek, strong and steady. "I'm terrified," he whispered. "Terrified that I hurt you too badly to fix it. Terrified that you'll choose someone else. Terrified that I finally figured out what I want only to lose it forever." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the tears slip down her cheeks. "You did hurt me. Really badly." "I know. I'm so sorry." His arms tightened around her. "But I'm not giving up. I'll spend every day proving I can be better if that's what it takes." They danced until the candles burned low, and when Sarah finally pulled away, something had shifted between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of a possibility that forgiveness could happen eventually. That night, they slept in the same bed for the first time, staying on separate sides but aware of each other in the darkness. It was a start. 3 days later, Derek texted, "Can we talk? Really talk? Meet me at Café Lucien at lunch?" Sarah stared at the message, knowing she needed to give him a real answer about where they stood. She texted back, "Okay, see you at noon." The cafe was quiet when she arrived, tucked away on a side street with only a handful of customers. Derek was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. He stood when he saw her, his smile warm but his eyes serious. "Thanks for coming," he said as she sat down. "I know things have been weird since I told you how I feel." "A little weird," Sarah admitted, "but we're adults. We can talk through it." Derek took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about you, and I need to be completely honest because I care about you too much to play games." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Sarah. Maybe I'm already there. And I think you feel something for me, too, even if you're trying not to." Sarah's chest tightened. She couldn't deny that Derek had become important to her, that she looked forward to seeing him, that his attention had been a lifeline during the loneliest months of her marriage. But was that love? Or was it just gratitude for basic human kindness? "Derek, you're an amazing person," she started, but he gently interrupted. "I know your marriage was arranged. I know you didn't choose him, but you can choose now." His eyes searched hers. "Life's too short to stay with someone who doesn't cherish you from day one. You deserve someone who wanted you from the moment they met you, not someone who needed jealousy to wake him up." Before Sarah could respond, the cafe door opened and cold air rushed in. She looked up and her heart stopped. Dae-sung stood in the doorway, his dark coat dusted with snow, his eyes locked on their table, more specifically, on Derek's hand near hers. He walked over with measured steps, his face calm, but something dangerous flickering in his eyes. When he reached their table, he looked at Derek with an expression that was perfectly polite and absolutely threatening at the same time. "Derek Williams?" His voice was steady and cold. "I'm Park Dae-sung, Sarah's husband." Derek stood, slowly, not backing down. "I know who you are. Maybe if you'd been a real husband from the beginning, we wouldn't be having this conversation." The tension crackled like electricity. Other customers were starting to stare. Sarah stood quickly, positioning herself between them, even though neither man had made any aggressive move. "Stop, both of you. This isn't happening here." Daesung's eyes never left Derek's face. You're right. I failed her. I was cold and distant, and I hurt her in ways I'll regret for the rest of my life. But I'm not that man anymore, and I'm not losing her. Then he finally looked at Sarah, and his expression transformed completely. The coldness melted away, leaving something raw and vulnerable. Unless she wants me to. If you want him, if you want out of our marriage, I won't stand in your way. I'll sign whatever papers you need, but you should know something first. Daesung, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. I'm completely in love with you. The words fell into the quiet cafe like stones into still water. I think I have been since the wedding. I was just too scared and too stubborn to admit it. Too busy nursing old wounds to see the incredible woman right in front of me. Sarah couldn't breathe. People were definitely staring now, but Daesung didn't seem to notice or care. I love how you hum while you cook, he continued, his voice getting stronger. I love how you call your mother every Sunday and laugh so loud I can hear you from any room in the apartment. I love how you tried so hard to reach me even when I gave you nothing in return. I love your kindness, your strength, your patience that I absolutely didn't deserve. I love you, Serafina, and if you'll let me, I will spend every single day for the rest of my life proving it. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. In the background, she heard someone whisper, "That's so romantic." But all she could focus on was Daesung's face, open and honest in a way it had never been before. Derek cleared his throat softly. When Sarah looked at him, she saw acceptance in his eyes, tinged with sadness, but genuine. He loves you, Derek said simply, and I think maybe you love him too, or at least you want to. He gave her a small smile. I'm not going to be the guy who stands in the way of that. You deserve to figure out your marriage without me complicating things. Derek, I'm so sorry, Sarah started, but he shook his head. Don't be. You were honest with me from the start. He looked at Daesung. Take care of her. Actually, take care of her this time. I will, I swear it. Daesung's voice was firm. Derek nodded, left money on the table for the coffee, and walked out of the cafe. The door chimed softly behind him. Sarah stood there, caught between relief and guilt and confusion, and something that felt dangerously close to hope. How did you know I was here? She asked. I didn't. I was walking to a meeting and saw you through the window. Daesung moved closer, his hands hanging at his sides like he wanted to touch her but wasn't sure if he could. When I saw him holding your hand, I felt like my heart was being ripped out. I couldn't just walk past. So you came in to claim me? To mark your territory? Anger flared despite her tears. No, I came in because I couldn't stand the thought of losing you without telling you the truth one more time, without making absolutely sure you knew that you have a choice. His voice dropped. I want you to choose me, Sarah. I want it so desperately I can barely think about anything else. But I want you to choose me because you want to, not because you're trapped. Sarah wiped her eyes, aware that everyone in the cafe was watching their drama unfold. Can we go somewhere private? Daesung nodded immediately. He paid for her coffee. Then they walked out into the snow that had started falling heavier. They walked in silence for several blocks before Sarah stopped in front of a small park, empty because of the weather. You hurt me, she said, her breath making clouds in the cold air. For 3 months you made me feel worthless, unwanted, like I was a burden you had to tolerate. I know. I cried myself to sleep wondering what was wrong with me, why my own husband couldn't stand to look at me or touch me or talk to me. I know, and I hate myself for it. Then Derek came along and he made me feel seen, valued. He wanted to know about my life, my thoughts, my feelings, things you couldn't be bothered with. Her voice rose. So yes, I got close to him, maybe too close, and part of me wanted you to notice, to care, to feel even a fraction of what I'd been feeling. Daesung flinched like she'd struck him, but he didn't interrupt. But you want to know something? Sarah continued, her tears mixing with melted snowflakes on her face. Even when Derek was being wonderful, even when I was angry at you, I still came home every night. I still hoped you'd change. I still wanted my husband to want me back. Sarah, he breathed her name like a prayer. So I need to know, Dae-sung, is this real? Are you really ready to be my husband, my partner, or are you just reacting to jealousy? Because if you're going to change your mind again, if you're going to go cold on me once the threat is gone, I need to know now. I can't survive that twice. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides and cupped her face with both hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears with infinite gentleness. It's real. This is the most real thing I've ever felt, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to love you so thoroughly that you never doubt it again. His forehead touched hers. Come with me. I want to show you something. They took a taxi to a storage facility in Queens. Sarah followed Dae-sung down fluorescent-lit hallways until he stopped at a unit and unlocked it. Inside was a small space filled with bags and boxes. He started pulling things out one by one, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Books by Ghanaian authors: Ama Ata Aidu, Aikwe Arma, Yagiasi. Traditional jewelry with Adinkra symbols. A framed map of Ghana with pins marking places she'd told him about in those early weeks. Photo albums of Ghanaian landscapes. Fabrics with kente patterns. Cooking supplies for making Ghanaian food. A journal with dates on the cover, starting from their wedding day. What is all this? Sarah whispered. Dae-sung picked up the journal and opened it, showing her pages filled with his handwriting. Every week of our marriage, I bought something for you but was too scared to give it. Too scared to admit I was starting to care. Too scared to let myself be vulnerable. He handed her the journal. And every week, I wrote how I felt, what I noticed about you, things I wanted to say but couldn't. Sarah read entries about how beautiful she looked in yellow, how her laugh made him smile despite himself, how her kindness made him feel ashamed of his coldness. Pages and pages of feelings he'd hidden while maintaining his ice-cold exterior. By the time she finished reading, she was crying again, but differently this time. You've been falling for me this whole time? She asked, terrified and falling. I kept telling myself it was just attraction, just proximity, anything but actual feelings. But feelings don't disappear just because you ignore them. They just grow bigger until they can't be contained anymore. He gestured at all the gifts. This was supposed to be for our first anniversary. I was going to give you everything at once and tell you how I felt. But then I saw that photo and realized I might not get the chance. That I'd waited too long and you'd found someone better. Sarah looked at the man she'd married, really looked at him, and saw past the careful control to the fear and love underneath. He'd been just as scared as she was, just as hurt by circumstances neither of them had chosen. The difference was he'd dealt with it by building walls while she'd tried to tear them down. I don't want someone better, she said softly. I want my husband, but I need him to really be my husband. No more walls, no more distance. If we do this, if I give us a real chance, I need all of you. The scared parts, the vulnerable parts, everything. You have me. Dae-sung pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her completely. All of me. I promise. Sarah tilted her face up and kissed him, really kissed him, pouring 3 months of hurt and hope into it. He responded with equal intensity, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pressed her closer. They kissed until they were both breathless, until the cold storage unit felt warm, until nothing existed except the two of them finally reaching for each other without hesitation. When they finally pulled apart, Dae-sung rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me? Sarah nodded. Take me home. The apartment felt different when they walked in together that evening, like the space itself had, transformed. Dae-sung hung up their coats while Sarah kicked off her shoes, and the simple domesticity of it felt monumental. They were finally on the same page, finally moving in the same direction, finally becoming what they'd promised to be on their wedding day. "Are you hungry?" Dae-sung asked, his voice slightly nervous. "I could order something." "Not really." Sarah turned to face him. "I'm still processing everything. The cafe, the storage unit, all of it." He moved closer, his hands sliding around her waist with a gentleness that made her heart flutter. "We don't have to rush anything. I meant what I said about proving myself. We can take this as slow as you need." But Sarah realized she didn't want slow anymore. They'd already wasted 3 months on distance and fear. Life was too short to hesitate when you finally found something real. She wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling his quick intake of breath. "I don't want slow," she whispered. "I want to start our marriage right. Tonight." Something flashed in his dark eyes, heat and tenderness mixed together. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured." "I'm sure." She pulled his face down to hers and kissed him, feeling him respond immediately. His arms tightened around her waist, lifting her slightly until her toes barely touched the ground. The kiss deepened, became more urgent, 3 months of denied attraction finally unleashed. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Dae-sung lifted her fully into his arms. She wrapped her legs around his waist and he carried her toward their bedroom, kissing her between steps. He set her down gently beside the bed, his hands trembling slightly as they traced the curve of her face. "You're shaking," she noted softly. "I'm nervous." He smiled, looking vulnerable and human in a way she'd never seen. "I've wanted this, wanted you for so long. Now that it's actually happening, I'm terrified of doing something wrong." Sarah took his hand and placed it over her racing heart. "I'm nervous too, but we'll figure it out together." They took their time, learning each other through gentle touches and whispered words. Dae-sung was attentive and careful, constantly checking if she was comfortable, if she wanted him to continue. When he finally pulled her close, skin against skin, Sarah felt complete in a way she'd never experienced. This wasn't just physical attraction. This was connection, intimacy, trust being rebuilt, one touch at a time. "I love you," he murmured against her shoulder, his arms wrapped tightly around her. "I'll say it every day until you believe it completely." "I'm starting to believe it," Sarah whispered back, running her fingers through his hair. They stayed awake late into the night, talking and laughing and exploring this new dynamic between them. When they finally fell asleep, tangled together, Sarah felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. The next morning, she woke to find Dae-sung watching her, propped up on one elbow, with a soft smile on his face. "How long have you been awake?" she asked, stretching. "A while. I like watching you sleep. You look peaceful." He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Good morning, wife." "Good morning, husband." The word felt right now, felt true. Over the next few weeks, they fell into new rhythms. Dae-sung started working from home 2 days a week so they could have lunch together. They cooked meals side by side, learning to work around each other in the kitchen. They talked about everything, making up for lost time, sharing childhood stories and dreams for the future. One weekend, Dae-sung surprised her with plane tickets. "We're going to Ghana," he announced. "I want to meet your family properly. Not as part of a business arrangement, but as your husband who loves you." Sarah threw her arms around him, overwhelmed by happiness. "Really? When?" "Next month. I already got the time off approved." He held her close. "I want to see where you grew up. Meet the people who made you who you are. Learn about your culture firsthand. And I want your family to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life making their daughter happy." The trip to Ghana was everything Sarah had hoped for. Dae-sung charmed her mother, bonded with her father over business and soccer, and played with her nieces and nephews until they were all exhausted. He tried every food her grandmother made, even the really spicy dishes that made his eyes water. He learned basic phrases in Twi and attempted traditional dances at a family gathering, looking completely ridiculous but trying so hard that everyone fell in love with him. On their last night in Accra, they sat on her childhood home's balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and purples. Dae Sing held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Thank you for bringing me here," he said quietly, "for letting me into this part of your life. Your family is wonderful. They love you. My mom told me I chose well." Sarah laughed. "I didn't have the heart to tell her I didn't actually choose you, though I guess in a way I did. I chose to give us a real chance. And I'll be grateful for that choice every day." He pulled out a small box from his pocket. "I have something for you." Inside was a ring, delicate gold with traditional Ghanaian Adinkra symbols engraved around the band. "It's a Sankofa symbol," Dae Sung explained. "It means you can look back to move forward. I thought it fit us. We had to look back at our mistakes, acknowledge our hurt, to move forward into something better." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger next to her wedding band. "It's perfect. You're perfect." He kissed her softly. "And I'm the luckiest man alive." They flew back to New York as true partners, true lovers, true husband and wife. Several months later, Sarah realized her period was late. A pregnancy test confirmed what her body already knew. She was carrying their child. When she told Dae Sung, his reaction was immediate and overwhelming. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're having a baby. Really? Really?" Sarah laughed as he set her down gently, then immediately placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there," he whispered to her belly. "I'm your dad. I can't wait to meet you." 9 months later, they welcomed a healthy baby girl with her mother's smile and her father's dark eyes. They named her Abina, after Sarah's grandmother, with the middle name of Ji Woo, honoring Dae Sung's heritage. Holding their daughter for the first time, Dae Sung looked at Sarah with such pure love that she felt her heart might burst. "We made this," he said in wonder. "We made someone so perfect." On a warm spring afternoon when Abena was a year old, they took her to the park. Sarah watched Dae Sung push their daughter on a baby swing, both of them laughing as she kicked her little feet in delight. Another father with his child called out a greeting, and they struck up a friendly conversation. When they separated, the man walked past Sarah and paused. "Derek?" She recognized him immediately, though he looked different, happier. "Sarah, how have you been?" His smile was genuine, no awkwardness remaining. A beautiful woman with a baby carrier approached and slipped her hand into his. "This is my wife, Michelle, and our son, James." Derek's face glowed with pride. "We got married last summer." "Congratulations!" Sarah meant it completely. "I'm so happy for you." "I'm happy for you, too. You look radiant." Derek glanced toward where Dae Sung was still playing with Abena. Things worked out the way they were supposed to. They really did. Sarah watched her husband lift their daughter into the air, making her shriek with joy. "It wasn't easy, but we figured it out." That's all that matters. Derek nodded goodbye and walked off with his family, and Sarah felt nothing but contentment. No regret, no what-ifs, just gratitude for the path that led her here. Dae Sung carried Abena over, her little hand patting his cheek. "Was that your old co-worker?" "It was. He's married now, has a baby." Sarah took Abena from him, settling their daughter on her hip. "Isn't it funny how things work out?" "Funny isn't the word I'd use." Dae Sung wrapped his arms around both of them. "Perfect fits better. This right here, you two, is my perfect." That evening, after Abena was asleep in her crib, they sat together on their couch, Sarah's head on Dae Sung's shoulder. He played with her fingers, touching both rings she wore. "Do you ever think about those first 3 months?" he asked quietly. "Do you regret that we started so badly?" Sarah considered the question. Sometimes I think about them. They hurt, and I won't pretend they didn't, but you know what? I don't regret them. You don't? No, because they taught us something important. They taught me that I'm strong enough to fight for what I want, and they taught you not to. Take people for granted, especially the ones you love. She lifted her head to look at him. If we'd started perfect, maybe we'd have fallen apart the first time things got hard. But we started hard and learned how to work through it. That makes us stronger. When did you get so wise? He kissed the tip of her nose. I've always been wise. You were just too stubborn to notice. She laughed when he tickled her side in retaliation. I love you, Serafina Park, he said seriously. Every day I love you more. Every day I choose you. Every day I'm grateful you chose me back. I love you too. She kissed him softly. Every single day. Outside their window, the city lights twinkled like stars, and inside their home, warmth and love filled every corner. They'd taken the coldest start and turned it into the warmest future. They'd transformed an arranged marriage into a real love story. And every day they chose each other all over again. That was forever. Not perfect, not without challenges, but built on a foundation of honesty, growth, and genuine love. The kind of forever worth fighting for. The kind of forever that started with jealousy, but bloomed into something neither of them had imagined possible. Their story had begun in coldness and doubt. It had survived hurt and misunderstanding, and it had transformed into something beautiful, something lasting, something real. Years later, when friends asked how they made their marriage work, Sarah and Dae Sung always gave the same answer. They never stopped choosing each other. They never stopped trying. They never stopped believing that love was worth the effort. And it was. Every single day, it absolutely was. If you enjoyed this love story, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next romance tale. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and let us know what type of love story you'd like to hear next.